Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everyone and everything in between. Welcome to the Stay Positive podcast. I'm Alex, and I'm joined by three awesome dudes today. Please introduce yourselves.
The usual. We're here in Boston, coming from the beautiful city of Boston, where it's literally blizzarding outside right now. EK's back. He's back.
How we doing?
And one of my great friends. He's just got a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, I'm fired up about crypto.
Yeah, Mikey, tell us about yourself a little bit.
What's up? I'm Mike. I'm Pete's best friend in the whole world. I've known him since about pre-K. Just kidding on that one. But no, I'm just at school with Pete, and I got super into crypto and kind of been doing a lot of research and pumping out some work on that.
That's awesome.
Did you convince him or he convince you?
Dude, I discovered crypto on my own. It was in like March. Because I had gotten into investing in September of 2019. So I became a big like money guy. And I was just watching some YouTube videos. And this one video, this guy was talking big about like crypto and Bitcoin. And I was like, okay, well, I'll deep dive into this. And then it's one of those things where like, once you get into it, it's kind of like you either decide you hate it right away or it just becomes pretty infectious. And I definitely like caught the bug. So
yeah, I feel that. EK, how did you get into crypto actually?
I got into it last year. I was coming in junior year of school, and one of my roommates one night like just kind of was telling me like buy Bitcoin, and I like didn't really understand like what that meant, or like I'd heard the name like term Bitcoin or whatever, but like I didn't really know too much about it, and showed me a couple videos, and I was the same way. Like I caught the bug quick, and like I really went down this like wormhole of just like Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, and like couldn't believe like how I hadn't heard of this yet, like, and how I didn't like know enough about this, and it was just like so interesting to me and so cool, and like, you know, from there like I've legitimately been following it every day, like, you know, dude, it's a big part of my life, honestly.
So I also got Alex into Bitcoin, and
It's true.
yeah, he was asking me because this was around mid-winter break. That I was back home, and I was just obsessed. I was reading everything, literally every little thing on Bitcoin on the internet. I was reading about it, and Alex was like asking me, okay, why are you so obsessed with this stuff? Can you just tell me, explain on a very, very high level what this stuff is? And I think the first thing I told him was just buy it, dude.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of underlying tech behind this thing. I think one of the most interesting things I've ever found was this thing called the Byzantine Generals problem. Hey, you've heard of it. I don't know if you've heard of it.
No, you were just kind of explaining it to me.
Yeah. Alex, have you heard of the Byzantine Generals problem?
No, I haven't.
Nothing? No. Okay, so it's basically a thought experiment. It has to do with how, what's the word? You said it before. Consensus. It's how to achieve consensus in a decentralized framework, right? So the underlying thing behind it is you have a system of, all right, well, this is like the super mathematical like explanation, you could say. But you have a system of whatever number of components, which are, you could say, dishonest, only point-to-point channel between all the components. Like, the thing comes from, let's say one general was in one place and another general was in another place. How will they know what the other person's strategy is on how to attack without an actual means of communication? You know, at the same time, how can they achieve the consensual agreement on an event?
So the way to kind of think about it is like you've got two generals up on two different hills, and then like a city they want to attack in the valley. And, you know, General A says, all right, we're going to attack at like 5 a.m. So he sends a horse to General B. But the problem is, how does General A know that General B got his horse? Yeah. So General B sends a horse back and says, yeah, I'm going to attack at 5 a.m. But how does General B know that General A got his horse? And this is important because if you're going to attack, you want consensus, right? Like both of these generals need to agree. So in a centralized system, let's bring in the money aspect here. The US dollar, the federal government is the consensus agent, right? Like we all use dollars, and if there's ever a dispute about dollars, the government has the power to step in and solve it. But if you're launching a decentralized currency, there is no central body of authority. So you need to find a way to reach consensus amongst decentralized peers, or else you wouldn't be able to verify transactions. So what happens in Bitcoin is it's an act of scale, essentially. It's if you add all of these nodes and you have 1,000 generals, and 1,000 generals are all confirming each other's messages, then you low-key, just based off of math, you get to say we've reached a statistical consensus. So there's not a pure consensus, right? Because it would theoretically just require infinite messages back and forth. But if you've reached a statistical probability of consensus, then it's an effective consensus. And that's kind of the framework for blockchain and decentralized node systems, is how do we agree that we've made these payments?
You look like you're about to explode.
I mean, dude, wow, that's incredible. I can't believe I can't believe I never heard of the Byzantine generals problem, but the way you just explained it, anyone with a brain is going to be able to understand that. Like, that was beautiful the way you just explained it, and that's literally like, that is blockchain to a T. It's like everyone's like verified, like it's like so trusted because like everything is like the horse A knows it, or the General A knows his horse got to General B, and General B knows his horse got to General A with blockchain technology.
Yeah.
Like it shows like all these, it's like a distributed ledger, and all these transactions are like approved and verified by like
exactly.
That's incredible. The way you explain it is a genius. We gotta clip that for sure. That's nuts. That was smart.
So Alex, do you
understand? That's gonna be a slice episode.
Yeah,
just that alone.
So do you understand it a little better now, Alex?
Yeah, no, I got it clearly. I have a question though. Why didn't the Byzantine Emperor? Why didn't they just use a cell phone? What are they, stupid?
I don't know. Maybe because I don't know.
Well,
stupid question.
I mean, that gets funny because now when you send a text message with iPhone, what does it say? Delivered, right? There's this whole like, people forget, we take a lot of things for granted, but like confirmation and verification is a technological act on its own, right? Like, how many times in the past could you send like an SMS, like the green text bubbles? You wouldn't know if it got there.
Yeah,
but now
so
iPhone,
true.
what did they do? They built their own network on their own centralized iMessage authority, and they act as the consensus agent. So now when they put delivered on your screen, you can trust that your message has been delivered. So this is a problem that spans any method of transaction, financial, communication, everything. Like, how do you verify is huge.
I don't know.
Like all of human history then.
Say it again, Alex.
So then all of human history then.
Oh yeah,
basically.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say transaction. I would literally just say communication.
Yeah, that's a better way of putting it for sure.
That's crazy to think of it like that. And it's also crazy how Apple is basically Big Brother and controls all our iMessage.
That's a whole nother pod, bro. But it's crazy. It's nuts.
We don't. The thing is, like, people may say they know, but do they really know? Like, when they're like using U.S. dollars and like having all these transactions, like, do they like are they like who's verifying the transactions? Like, how do they know they're really happening? Like, you don't, like, with it's the banks that like verify your transactions, right? But like, that's a centralized thing, so it can't be trusted as much as something that's decentralized, where like the people are verifying their transactions with blockchain. Like, that's why I think, like, you know, the dollar is just dead because of like that alone. Like, it can't be trusted. Like, and you know, we think we know what's going on in these transactions, but in reality, like, we really don't. Like, we don't. Like, people might think they do, and there might be a process, but no one sees it happening. No, but like, maybe they have record. Dude, I just don't buy it. And like, blockchain is just so legit in the sense that every single thing can be traced. Like, every transaction can be verified, and it is multiple times by, you know, I don't know how many different
tons.
Yeah, right, tons of times. Like, and that's why it really is. Like, even if you don't believe in Bitcoin, or like, because there are a lot of people that don't in cryptos, like guys like Peter Schiff, like these guys, like whoever they are, like, even if they don't believe in any of these cryptos, everyone can agree on the fact that blockchain is a revolutionary technology and might be the biggest thing since the invention of the internet, just because of how we're going to be able to use it in the future.
Yeah, so that's what actually I wanted to let that lead to the next thing. just the idea of blockchain itself, I think I agree, completely revolutionary. I'm very, very much bought into the idea. Obviously, this kind of gets us to also an argument against Bitcoin, but not there yet. I think that there are so many applications for it that we don't even, we're like, my comparison always was, we're in the 80s for blockchain, like where the internet was at that time. You know, like we need like another 30 years to see what this beast could really be, at least. But when we do, I mean, geez, I couldn't even fathom. Just imagine never ever having to adhere to a single type of currency or several type of currencies ever again. Everyone uses the same currency on the planet. That's essentially like a possibility, the way I see it.
Yeah, well, what you're really seeing too is like I think this idea of like a recent thing, if you want to get like deep into the altcoin forest here, is like Chainlink and Polkadot. There's a lot of, it's called like cross-chain communication.
Yes.
So, Bitcoin is great because it has the powerful network effects. It's strong immutability. It has the most hash power on the network, right? But there's things that other cryptocurrencies do better. So like with Ethereum, you can write programmable contracts. With something like Yearn Finance, it's like algorithmically optimized for yield farming, all these kinds of things. Cardano has a like decentralized governance platform that's super beta, but incredibly interesting. So what you see is there's now cryptocurrencies that their whole thing is like, we'll let you link cryptocurrency transactions. So how do we take the Bitcoin blockchain and marry it to the Ethereum blockchain? How do we marry that to the Cardano blockchain? So imagine if you were in a world and currencies had properties. And now whenever I spend a currency, my phone, my wallet is just programmed to link my transactions amongst the most optimal chain of currencies according to properties. And then it constantly incentivizes society to develop the most beneficial property-based currencies they can. So I don't necessarily know if I buy into the like, it's all going to go Bitcoin or it's all going to go ETH. But I see like this beautiful marriage between all of these like different blockchains and technologies.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a huge misconception about all this as well, is that people think that when you create a blockchain that you can only use Bitcoin on the Bitcoin blockchain, Ethereum on the Ethereum blockchain. No, there is literally technology coming out that allows you to transfer between. I mean, one example actually is Sushi Swap. It's a lending platform that lets you essentially just loan out your Bitcoin, and you can accrue interest based on you being almost like a bank, because you're just letting people borrow it in a way. And that's in itself a way that you can convert Bitcoin into another platform. So that's literally just one way. I mean, there's so many other blockchains that are doing stuff like this right now. And I mean, even beyond the financial sector, I feel like healthcare needs it for sure.
Definitely.
Healthcare needs blockchain. I know we talked about this because of our senior design project, but I'm very much a huge believer that the energy sector needs it as well. But that's a really tough problem to solve because electricity is not really easy to play with. Do you guys have any other thoughts on what do you think blockchain could help us fix?
Well, just imagine having
voting as well.
Yeah,
that's one thing.
Having a permanent online presence of information, right? So if I could upload all my insurance documents, my ID, all this kind of stuff, and then it's just like I have we give people a social security number. Like people get really scared of this, but like we've already given somebody that like this is the one number that you need to protect to keep your whole life. Well, why don't we wrap other things into that? Why don't I just have my social security number now act as the key for my insurance, for my driver's license, for my academic records, like my transcripts, for my bank account? Like you can tie all of this together, and then all of a sudden, like if I am doing a loan agreement with some other body or something, I send them that, and then in that contract they can now pull my credit history from like this stored information that's just on these decentralized platforms. And then all of a sudden, like I think that just makes like all of this removes so much friction and just makes everybody's lives like easier and more. And again, now I know this person who says who they are. have a more trusted way
That
of
they
telling
are
who they are. Exactly. Right. So I think it's just store information. What a beautiful way of storing information.
You speak really well on it, but what Pete said, like, is also a really good analogy. Like, we are like in the 80s with blockchain, like the 80s was in with the internet. Like,
Yeah.
and I don't know if that's exactly how you said it, but it's that same concept of like 25 years from now, like 50 years from now, like this is gonna be the technology. Like, you know, like this is like what's, you know, gonna really take us like to places that we didn't even know. Like the whole, like, we really are tied into a social security number.
Right. You already have a number. Like if there was no number where someone could hack your life, maybe this would make me nervous. Right. But like it already exists. Like by doing this, you're not taking on any new risk. Right. You're just reaffirming the already level of risk, but just getting more benefit out of it. So if you can up your gain but keep your risk fixed, that seems like a win-win to me.
And it's only possible with blockchain. Like, that's like super important to understand. That's what I was saying. Like, everyone like is on board with like, hey, like maybe it's not Bitcoin, maybe it's not Ethereum or Doge or what, like, but it is blockchain. Like, it is blockchain. Like that, like this podcast. I mean, geez, can we talk about it? Holy cow! Like, you really said some smart stuff that, like, if whoever's listening to this, like, really think about that, because it.
You know, it really all just comes down to forms of communication. The Byzantine generals problem itself is the underlying aspect of how we exchange ideas. An idea can be me asking you to join the podcast today, or me paying you for a bottle of orange juice.
Right. In a digital world, they're the same thing.
Basically. Because everything runs in bits nowadays. It's ones and zeros. A computer is not going to know whether I'm asking you for a bottle of orange juice, a coffee, or a new microphone.
Yeah, right.
It's just going to see it as data.
So true.
Yeah. So, Alex, what are your thoughts, dude? I feel like you're just...
Alex is taking it all in.
I had 3 questions.
Yeah.
4 if we include... So since this is the most recent, so for the social security idea, you are thinking of lumping all the important information about ourselves on top of whatever the social security takes care of. Doesn't that create a bigger risk in the sense that if someone has your social security, your life is even more screwed than it already would have been?
Right. So this is, I mean, it's definitely like, it's important to note that like, it's hard to find a solution that solves absolutely everything. And then I'm also like a little more of a rarity amongst I'm definitely like a hardcore crypto Bitcoin kind of guy, but I'm maybe a little more of a rarity that I still do believe in like central governance and central bodies. So yeah, we'll get into how you hold both of those heads in your thought at the same time, because that's definitely my more contentious opinion. But, you know, it's the same thing here, right? Like, there is some form of remittance. Like, if your social security gets stolen, like, it is a pain in the ass. But in a theoretically good system, you would be able to talk to the government officials properly and recover that and change your number and get it.
In this theoretically
Yeah. We're working on it. But, you know, there's so I do still see like a path to remittance for that and some form of central management, right? But I think the blockchain technology, like the wrapping all of that into a single access point that can then be pulled from anyone, like how crazy is it that I have to like scan my birth certificate, send that scan to somebody, then they have to like whatever, I don't even know what backend they use to verify that stuff. Why can't I just say, hey, here's a hash number, you'll find my birth certificate there? Like that, like why can't I just text someone the hash to get to my birth certificate? Yeah. You know, like I like the technology's there, and as like a lover of technology, it's just so painful to use all these old like fax. What the hell is fax? Like, why is that still a thing? You know? So I think definitely like there needs to be some sort of system in place for recovery, because like you lose your Bitcoin, like you're losing some money, but you're not losing your life, hopefully. But like, if you lose this number, there does need to be some path to remittance for not losing all of your stuff. Don't lose proof that you exist, right?
Dude, of course. You've heard about the guy that literally threw his $250 million worth of Bitcoin into the trash and went in search in the landfill area to find it. The other guy in the Bay Area that lost it because he lost the password.
He has only 2 more attempts left, and he's got like over 220 million in Bitcoin. Or something crazy. And he's like a programmer in San Fran too. Like this guy, like, and like he like grouped with like a bunch of the smartest people he knew, and like they went through and did like 8 of his most common passwords. Like he just says like some nights he just doesn't sleep. Like he'll just look up at the ceiling and just think. Just like, dude, like that is scary. Yeah. But at the same time, like something like, hey, buddy, if you're listening, I hope you don't find that password, chief. Like, it's actually like good for Bitcoin. That because there's so much lost Bitcoin out there.
See, that's what I was gonna get into. Actually, that's kind of one of the beefs I have with Bitcoin. So, like, one of the interesting things is, and this is maybe jumping far ahead into the conversation because I know Pete had his little order flow here, and I don't want to ruin that, but I don't think Bitcoin's perfect, and I don't think Bitcoin is like an end game currency, because one of the big problems with Bitcoin is the incentive to save and acquire Bitcoin is almost too strong, right? So I agree. I look at it like Bitcoin is the perfect savings vehicle. It's the more you save, the more people save, the more positive the price action, the more reinforcing the saving aspect of it is. It's a positive feedback loop for saving money, which is like probably a good thing to have in society. But anything taken too far is bad, right? So one, in the Bitcoin ecosystem, if someone loses their Bitcoin, everyone else makes money off that. And I don't think you want to live in a society where like someone else's financial pain is your financial gain, right? Like I believe in a society where like we can generate financial wealth by like creating beautiful things and creating exciting technologies and so far, we've generated wealth through surplus, right? Where we make enough apples or we make enough cars that the surplus lifts us all up. Yep. Bitcoin, in a way, creates wealth through starvation, right? There's a shortage of Bitcoin, right? So I think that's something that's like it's hard to say. Like I make money whenever people lose Bitcoin, but I don't. That doesn't feel right. That doesn't sit right with me sometimes. And then the other problem is, in an economy, you want people to spend. Like the dirty little secret is like credit cards are so good for the economy because people spend money that they can't afford. They do all this crazy shit, but it's stimulus, right? It's permanent incentive to stimulus, and it encourages people to take risks. But with Bitcoin, why on God's earth, if I know for a fact my Bitcoin's going to be worth more in 10 years than it is right now, why would I ever spend it?
Exactly.
Why there's no credit card in a Bitcoin ecosystem. Yeah. So how do you stimulate an economy where all the economic participants are incentivized to just hold and do nothing? So I think that's why.
I think that's where it is right now. Like, I don't necessarily think that's how it's going to be forever. But, like, yeah, right now, like, the reason why Bitcoin works is because people hold it. Like, the holders are the ones that literally keep Bitcoin afloat. If everyone was just selling, like, it would be terrible. But, like, I think, like, I don't know how many years it'll take, but eventually, no, like, I don't think it will be like that. Like I said, I don't know how long that'll take, but I think eventually it won't be like, oh my God, we can only hold it now. I hope it'll get to a point where it'll be such a secure thing and like such a way of the world that like people start using it for like just normal transactions and aren't like hold. Like, I don't know if that's the case. I hope that's what it'll be. I like envision like that's kind of like how it will be. And like even back to like if someone loses their Bitcoin, they lose, or we make money. Like the holders make money. But I think like hopefully like that won't like happen in the future, and like we'll have ways like to work around that where it won't be like that. But I mean, as of right now, like I guess like it is true, like that is kind of how it is. Like, there's like all this lost Bitcoin just sitting out there, and it'll never be, it's already mined up, like it'll just never be found. It'll just always kind of be floating around.
Yeah, so there's like all the technology with like recovery phrases. I don't know if you've run into those. Like you can right. So you can have a 12-word phrase that generates your private keys. So if you lose your like wallet, your Bitcoin wallet, you can run these through a recovery phrase algorithm, and it'll get you your keys back. So I think the rate at which we lose Bitcoin is going to go down, which is an inevitably good thing. But I also see I have this weird spiritual moment where you get into Bitcoin and you're like, what is it? And then you're like, you start with Bitcoin's digital gold, and then you get deeper, and then you're like, oh, Bitcoin's so much more than digital gold. And then I think I went even deeper, and now I'm like, no, wait, it really is just digital gold. And my personal stance is I want Bitcoin to really just be a super, super good digital gold, because gold plays a solid role in the economy. It works as the non-sovereign proof of settlement, right? But it doesn't take over. We're not all paying each other with gold. Gold can coexist with the US dollar. Gold can coexist with the euro, with all these currencies. So, in my mind, low-key Bitcoin cannibalizes gold, because I think that's happening.
Oh, I 1,000% agree.
And then what happens is now you've created a non-sovereign savings account for people across the world, which has to be a good thing, I think.
That is.
And the other thing is if Bitcoin is the theoretical perfect hedge against money printing.
It is. That's exactly what it is.
So this is where and this is where kind of the libertarian in me must come out a little bit, but you want freedom of the press, so the government has to monitor their behavior. Depending on where you fall on the side of the argument, an argument for guns is that it keeps the government in check. Well, what if Bitcoin, the presence of Bitcoin, the fact that people can escape the dollar if they need to, makes the government start treating the dollar with more respect, and they start and they start to check their behavior, and it stops this crazy printing that shoots house prices to the moon. It shoots stocks to the moon, and people who weren't in early enough, people who weren't rich enough to have assets, are just getting screwed.
And it devalues the dollar every second. And but that's what it is. They know it. The Fed could just print as much money as they want. We have unlimited money, but that means there's no value to the dollar. If we ever need more money, we just print it. That's why Bitcoin is literally the perfect hedge against that, because we don't want to live in a place where you could that's how the system works. And Bitcoin is the way of saying I think that's such a great analogy with people that want to say that they want to have their right to bear arms. Their reasoning behind that should be to keep the government in check, right? That's how it was originally.
Or freedom of press is to keep the government in check. Right to assembly
not have too much power.
Is to keep the government in check, right? I don't think it's unpatriotic at all to say I like the fact that Bitcoin exists because it can keep my government a more just government. Because right now the problem is there's a check on government behavior, right? Theoretically, the press is supposed to stop them from doing crazy stuff, but there's no check on the Fed and the central bank.
No,
they have a blank check to print as much money as they want and buy as many assets as they want, right? So all of a sudden, the people have this thing in their back pocket where the Fed's dude, if we take this too far, we lose, right?
Yeah.
So, and then what happens if the Fed decides to be healthy? And how do we introduce money but introduce it evenly and fairly? How do we stimulate in a recession but make sure it's distributed more fairly? If Bitcoin only stays at the price it is right now, but all of a sudden the government starts taking care of more people, that sounds like a success to me. I would count that a victory.
For Bitcoin, right? Just
for everyone, right?
But I get what you're saying. You're saying for Bitcoin,
I'm a team player. I'm a Bitcoin boy, but I'm in it for everybody. I'm just hoping the best for everybody.
Yeah,
it's kind of
I feel that. I mean, the way I see it is we've quite literally discovered how to mine gold digitally. That's how it works nowadays. I mean, we don't even know where this thing can go, but that's what I love about it. And honestly, you brought the perfect counter argument for Bitcoin that I was going to say. I mean, aside from the fact that Bitcoin is not going to be the one-stop shop, in my opinion, it's not perfect. We know it's not perfect because of the intrinsic my gain is your pain type of thing,
Right.
I don't think there's really anything more to dive deeper into regarding Bitcoin than that. I think also what people need to not misconstrue is the fact that this is also extremely new. So the relative rate of adoption for something like this is always going to be low in the beginning anyway. People need to really not buy into it because it's a fad, but because they understand the value behind it. Otherwise there's no reason to do it, right? Like, I think one of the most interesting things I ever read, but that kind of kickstarted my whole investing interests, was when I saw Warren Buffett's style value investing. And he basically would say he never invests in a company that he doesn't know anything about. And, I didn't really get that until I started reading a little more and a little more. And it's like, you have to read what the company's doing. How are they making their money? Why are they making their money? Exactly. What does their income statement look like? What does their balance sheet look like? Are they doing stuff that's healthy for the market? Are they doing stuff that is going to destroy their competition? There's so many factors you need to keep into account. But at the end of the day, if you understand what is going on under the hood, then you're set.
This is why I think so many Bitcoin conversations, I hate it when they just start talking about the price.
Yes.
Because I have
yes.
I talk about Bitcoin a lot, so I'll have random people text me and they'll be like, should I get into Bitcoin? And then, I'll say, here's my opinion. It's your own money. Do what you want. Whether you buy or sell, at least educate yourself. But then they'll say, oh, do you think there's going to be a pullback? And my whole thing is hey, let's say Bitcoin's at I'll just use fake numbers, but let's say Bitcoin's at 10K and you're oh, if it hits 9K, I'll buy. My thing is hey, if you're waiting for Bitcoin to hit 9K to buy, that's when you decide to buy, don't buy Bitcoin.
You're not the right guy to buy Bitcoin.
Look, this is a crazy speculative. This is all ones and zeros on a screen, right? This is, at the end of the day, as much as I believe in it, this is wild. This is a thought experiment still. So if $1,000, if a 10% price difference is what matters to you in an asset that can swing 60, 75% in a day, don't get involved, right? It's either one of those things where you wake up and you're dude, I want to buy some Bitcoin today, or you don't.
I think that's important to what you were saying, Pete. It really is, for people out there that are looking to get into Bitcoin, as much as I'd love to tell you, just get into it because it's sick. No, don't. Do your homework. Understand, why Bitcoin would work. Understand why you believe in it. Understand the value behind it. Because that's huge. Because it is so easy. People are on social media and, they post something about Bitcoin or they post something about Doge. Dogecoin, just a meme coin. People create it off the internet. It's what? You know what I mean? It's stupid. So don't buy into Bitcoin. Don't buy into any of these, without really understanding why. 100%. Because, that and then to your point about the price, and you were saying look, if it's at 10,000, someone texts me, oh, should I wait till it goes to 9,000? I said, that's the wrong person to be buying Bitcoin, which is true. And at least from my perspective, I always like to think look at, regardless, I always tell people when they are buying Bitcoin, just make sure, the only thing you have to make sure of is that your dollar cost averaging. So you don't care what price you're buying at. You never should, because that 5 years down the line, a year down the line, 10 years down the line, however long you want to say, but long term, the price that you're buying it at now is going to be greater than it was when you first bought it. And that has remained true from the very first time that I've started buying Bitcoin, and I've lived by that, and it's what's made my Bitcoin do so well. And I try to tell people that look at when it was at 35,000, I'm gonna wait till it goes back to 30,000 or whatever, and is it gonna go back to 20,000 or? But the next thing you know, it's at 40,000, and then people are saying the same thing at 40,000. Oh, I'm gonna wait till it goes back to 35. You're gonna keep running into that problem. So it's really important. When you are buying, make sure your dollar cost averaging it, and just know that. Which goes back to believing in the underlying technology, believing in the value of Bitcoin, that it's just going to be greater in the future. So it doesn't matter what price you're buying it at now. You got to know that because you trust in it, because you've done your homework, that it's just going to be, higher in the future.
And only ever buy as much as you can lose. Don't if you can't afford to lose the money, just don't buy anything.
Just deplete your credit cards on it. Pay all your life savings.
Reverse mortgage your house. You heard it here first.
Alex, you were the first person that questioned me on the volatility of Bitcoin, because you were doing some short trades with it the first day you ever bought it, and I was telling you don't do that. But can you speak on that a little bit?
Well, I stopped doing that, so there's a indication on how well that went. But I mean, the thing is, I study a little bit of penny stocks. Do you guys know what those are?
Yeah.
So this isn't the podcast for that, but with penny stocks, the volatility is really high, and you can make a lot of money really quickly if you know what you're doing and get lucky. So when you said Bitcoin was volatile, that kind of made me think, oh, so this is one of those things where you buy and then sell quickly because it'll go up and down and up and down. So that was kind of my thought process. And to a certain extent, I haven't abandoned that idea because I keep seeing it fluctuate from 38,000 to 32,000 to 37,000 to 30,000 to, it's not bouncing as volatile as a penny stock per se, but it is bouncing back and forth for the last few weeks. So my idea was I could have made if I sold it at 38,000 and then waited for it to go to 29,000 and then sell it again for 38,000, I could have made $3,000 off of doing that with $5,000. So I would have made $8,000 total.
Yeah, so I think a couple of things there. It's one is the easy thing to always say is if you sell the top and buy the low, you'll always make money on any asset ever invented, right? So I think hindsight's always 20/20 on these trades. The other thing is people forget. One, I completely agree. Volatility is, if you want to make money and profits, you're going to be looking to go long on volatile positions for sure, right? But people forget. Say you have $100, and on Monday you lose 10%, and then on Tuesday you make 10%. You end up with $99 actually because of math with fractions. So people always forget that when you're making all of these trades and all these volatile assets, your downside exposure just crushes you and it just eats into your capital. And all it takes is one bad trade to undo so much work. So what I tell everybody is there's absolutely nothing wrong with being an investor where you're just buy and hold, and unless something fundamentally changes the asset, don't sell, right? There's also nothing wrong with being a trader. If you think penny stocks are super volatile, I feel comfortable, I know what I'm doing, dude, go make some money, chase that bag, I'm all for it. But what you cannot do is treat one asset both ways. You cannot treat something that you're investing in like it's a trade. And you cannot treat something you're trading like it's an investment. So the problem I see with Bitcoin is everybody says, they're oh, I know this is an investment. I know it's going up long term, but I'm going to trade it right now. I'm that you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Literally contradicting yourself.
Because the behavior it takes to make a successful investment is the exact opposite behavior it takes to make a successful trade. So when you do both, you're just getting the worst of both worlds. So I have nothing against people who want to trade Bitcoin. I have nothing against people who want to trade anything, but you can't do them both.
No, definitely.
At least not in the same portfolio, that is.
You're not going to do it successfully.
You could do some crazy technical analysis in one portfolio with half of a Bitcoin if you wanted to.
Well, it's all capital allocation though, right? So if I'm in my eyes, I have a Roth and I have just a standard investing account, right? But I don't act in my Roth differently than my investing account, because then that would be me almost admitting that I have one strategy that's better than the other.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't I just do the same strategy in both accounts, right? So I also don't get when people are oh, I have this serious money and I have these serious stocks over here, but this is just my play account. I'm look, if you want to play a new strategy and give a strategy a test run with some money and see how it feels to have market weight behind a strategy, that's a psychological experiment. That's a learning experience. That's good. But if you think you can concurrently run two strategies, Warren Buffett said it best, diversification is for the weak. Pick a winning strategy and roll with it,
That's interesting, because the way I'm looking at it right now as well is that I want to split my portfolio into two, which is one that's more long-term minded, another one that's risky short-term as well. Which
is fine as long as they're not the same assets, though, right?
Yeah, no, of course they're not.
I talk all the time. I'm an investor, but dude, sometimes I read some crazy stuff online and I just want to make a quick trade, right? I'm dude, this is a good idea.
Dude,
GameStop is
AMC.
A perfect example. Just make the trade.
Nokia.
And then I read people hold. I'm dude, now you're investing a trade, and that's a bad idea.
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted to, especially with Mike here, I wanted to bring up so I don't know if you guys understand what Satoshis are.
Of course. It's decimal denomination of Bitcoin.
Yeah,
exactly. So basically what a Satoshi is it's a unit of measurement they use with Bitcoin. And the way I like to explain it to people that don't understand is it's similar to cents on the dollar. At least in my mind, that's how I see it. So like, 100 cents gets you $1. And the same goes with Satoshis. So, but the conversion's different. So it's 100 million Satoshis gets you 1 Bitcoin. And I know they say like Bitcoin is not technically infinitely divisible. Like, I don't know if it is technically, but like with the different unit of measurements, I think it is. And that's what I think people should try and start paying more attention to is the Satoshis and not so much the Bitcoin. Like, I have friends text me all the time like, oh, I want to get into Bitcoin, but the price is too high. I'm like, well, like, you're looking at the wrong thing. I'm like, you shouldn't be worried about the price of a Bitcoin. Like, you should be worried about the price of the Satoshis because eventually, like, that's what's going to be
for sure, like,
worth the most. And if you look at like the numbers, and you guys, especially like math guys, like, will really understand. Like, I guess like I don't know what the right word is. Like,
analyze.
No, not analyze. Like, you'll appreciate it more.
Oh, okay.
So 10 years ago, $1 was worth 400 million Satoshis, right? 10 years ago, it was $1 to 400 million Satoshis.
Yeah.
Today, it's $1 to 2,500 Satoshis or 3,000 Satoshis, whatever it is. Like,
it's astronomical.
Okay, it's astronomical, right? You can't even it's hard to really think about. Like, or like, at least for me, like, it's hard to really understand how great that truly is. And I like to assume that at the rate that it's going, I would eventually believe that one day, I don't know how long it's going to take, I don't know what year it'll be, but I truly believe that eventually it could be a 1-to-1 ratio where it's $1 to 1 Satoshi. And there's people like all my buddies, I'm in a huge group chat with like over 50 people, like all just buying Bitcoin. Like, these guys will tell you that like the US dollar, like they're like, hey, we're going to retire when it's $1 to 0.01 Satoshis. Like, the Satoshis will be worth more than the US dollar. And like, I mean, it sounds like incredibly crazy, but like if you look at the numbers and like, it kind of makes sense. And I just see like, look at the US dollar is just going down. It's getting devalued every day. And the price, like, just go look at any chart. Like, the price of the US dollar has literally plummeted in the past 10 years.
Fun fact, actually, I talked about this with Owen, but he told me that the conversion rate between the Chinese yuan and the US dollar is the lowest it's been in years. I think 5 years or something like that. It's like 6.5 yuan to the
$1.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, China's having a lot of fun games with their currency right now. I don't know how much anybody really wants me to go deep state on all of that.
Deep state.
But
I want to hear like what you think about like the Satoshis.
I think that's a way, way better mindset for sure. I think people like it's a fractional mindset versus like a whole piece mindset. Is the things like all stocks are fractions, right? So like if I buy one stock of Apple and it goes up 10%, or I buy 0.1 stock of Apple and it goes up 10%. It's not about how much money you're making. It's about the rate of money you're making. Yeah. So I think you're totally like 1,000% right. People think I can't buy enough of a Bitcoin to make a difference. And I say, well, like, that's not a good way to be looking at any sort of investment, because especially if you're in the state where you don't think you can make enough of an investment to make a difference, that means you need to be making an investment. You need to start growing your money because you already feel intimidated, So I think getting caught up in those kinds of things is like very detrimental. And the Satoshi mindset is such a positive trend that I've seen. It's such like a healthy mindset. And people should take that to stocks too. Like, if you like Amazon and you can't buy a full share of Amazon, buy a fractional share. Like, get in on the action, get off the sidelines on whatever it is you want to do.
Yeah, I agree. Alex hit me up last year about his first investment ever. And Alex, you want to tell him about it? I won't say anymore.
Oh, the Beyond Meat investment?
Oh, that's done pretty well for you recently.
Yeah, I made like $2,000, so that was cool. I could have made more if I sold it earlier, but I'm an idiot, so there you have it.
Hindsight, man.
Hindsight's so 2020. It's crazy.
But I made a profit, so that's good.
I don't have any sell targets on any of my investments. I don't believe in to buy and hold for a lifetime. Like, you should low key probably sell eventually.
Have your sell points for sure.
Right. But my thing is my sell points are completely tied to the underlying business. So I thought about buying Beyond Meat over the summer. I didn't end up buying. I went into some other stuff. But my thesis for Beyond Meat would be, one, we look at the negative environmental impacts of meat-based production versus plant-based meat. You look at the societal trends just towards veganism, vegetarianism take over more and more. You look at McDonald's adopting this stuff. You see market weight. Eventually, they're going to get the cost of manufacturing under what it takes to make real meats. It'll be the cheaper alternative, right? So my thing is I'm going to follow those trends. And as long as those trends stay true, I'm still in on this investment. And once the market is saturated, once the price has dropped so much that I don't think they can squeeze any more margins out of their product, once that happens, I'm going to think about, okay, now either A, is this company increasing dividends and returning cash to me? Am I making a high yield on the stake I already have? Or B, is it time for me to exit? But all of those decisions are completely irrelevant to current share price. I might have an investment that shoots up 400%, but dude, that's fine. I'll ride it out. I'm not here to sell in this window. I'm here to ride this investment out because I'm expressing my worldly views and my worldly theses where I put my money. So I guess it's all just kind of how you want to look at your portfolio. But I don't have sell dates in mind for pretty much anything I buy, unless I'm you see a fun GME type trade, hop in on it, have some fun. Again, you can trade, but
yeah, actually, here's one thing that I'm kind of differing from a lot of people. Because I've done a lot of research on what the relative all-time highs are going to be over at the end of this bull run.
Plan B.
For what? Bitcoin?
Plan B.
Dude, that's my fucking...
Dude, everyone...
Sorry, I know this is... I don't know if this is... Dude, Plan B is my guy. And people laughed at me. I'm not kidding when I said people laughed at me. In my face, told me I was an idiot when I said Bitcoin would be $20,000 by the end of this year. And I had a bet with one of my buddies that it would be, and sure enough, it was over 20,000. And you know who I got that from? Plan B. Look him up on Twitter. That guy doesn't miss. I don't know how long he's been doing his stock to flow asset model, but it's at the end of each year, it has been so disgustingly accurate. It's either right above or right below his number. And next year, he has Bitcoin at $100,000. That's the price range. And here's my receipt for it, guys. Bitcoin, $100,000 by next year. Everyone can laugh. It's all good. No one wants to believe it. But yeah, I trust Plan B. He has not wronged me in the past. And I know he does his homework. So I'm looking at that chart and saying 100,000 by next year. And that even goes back to my point was saying it doesn't matter what price you're buying it at, because at the end of next year, right, it's just going to be more than what you're buying.
You either believe it's going high
or you don't. It's super simple stuff. But it's funny about Plan B, because I introduced a lot of people to him that don't really know his stuff. And he was also one of the first guys that I was kind of getting into with Bitcoin, and looking at what he was doing. And I thought the stock to flow model was just genius. And I can't believe he was the only one doing it.
So I have a couple beefs with the stock to flow model. The only problem is, dude, it's so right. How do you
right.
I have in he basically prices Bitcoin entirely based off the supply of Bitcoin, which is so counterintuitive to all economic models. Because how do you price? I understand supply, but where's the demand? He literally doesn't take demand. There's no value for demand in his pricing model at all, yet it still works, which is, first of all, mind-blowing. So that just doesn't make sense to me. But again, it works. So who am I to, again, how do you argue results? And then the other thing I'll say, though, is and I think Plan B would, this is one thing as a mathematician he would admit himself, is the stock to flow model is an exponential model, right? And every exponential model has to end, right? Because theoretically, Bitcoin can't be worth infinite of anything because there isn't infinite of anything, right? So it has Plan B stock to flow model, doesn't account for demand, and it has an expiration date, but it's just so on the money right now that you have to humble yourself and just say whether or not I agree with this, I'm certainly looking at it and I'm certainly thinking about it.
Here are my thoughts on this, and this is going to take me back to what I was going to say before. What I'm doing differently than everyone else, taking Plan B into account, taking Max Kaiser, all these people that are so-called gurus on cryptocurrency. They're at the end of this bull run, I'm just gonna sell and rebalance it all, because right now I think that we're not even close to the all-time highs that we're going to see. I totally agree with 100K. I think even higher. I think at an all-time high, it can go as high as 250.
At an all-time high?
Like within the next 12 months, it's going to correct.
Within the next 12 months, you think it could go to 250?
Yes, easily. It can go to 250.
Because if you watch the Plan B, it always overshoots. Yeah, right.
It'll correct for sure. It'll go down back to 120, 100, something like that. We might see an insane spike, and that's at the point that I sell. Like, if anything that overshoots way farther than 100K, I know it's not going to stay there. Just think of it like this. There's not enough liquidity in the market to sustain a price like that for long enough. So it has to correct. That's how Bitcoin
So actually,
has
interestingly enough, liquidity is a whole other type thing, right? But essentially, Bitcoin has the other effect of being, because it's finite, it's essentially a liquidity sponge, right? Like, let's say you get 1,000 people to buy Bitcoin. Let's say even 10 of those are extremists and they say, I'm just never selling ever. You've taken those 10 off the market. So what have you done is the order book is running on top of shorter amount of shares outstanding, Bitcoin outstanding. So I actually think you reach this really strange state where as people hodl Bitcoin, volatility actually goes up. But as the price goes up, you build thicker order books with larger orders. True. And the volatility goes down. So, totally. so the real question is, one, what wins out? Dude, I have no clue. I have absolutely no clue.
The way I look at Bitcoin,
but you could see it become hyper volatile. You could see it become hyper non-volatile. What an interesting pricing dynamic.
I mean, I see it totally in terms of market capitalization. That's how I look at all the other crypto assets as well. Because this is where I kind of disagree with you on the value of Bitcoin in the next 20 years or so. I think you said something like a 1-to-1 ratio of Satoshis. That would put Bitcoin at literally $100 trillion, which is...
Is it 100 trillion?
Yeah, because it's 100 million times the circulating supply of Bitcoin, basically. It would be close to something absurd like that.
Be a big number.
I don't know if it's 100 trillion. I think it's 10 million.
10 million of Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Let's do some quick math.
Do the math. You could definitely do the math, but I'm pretty sure it's a 10 million price point.
What's a Satoshi?
It's one Bitcoin is 100 million Satoshis.
It's like cents on the dollar type thing.
And what's and you want it to be
21 million Bitcoin in circulating supply. That would be 2.1 exponent 15. That is trillion.
Yeah, but then you have to divide that by 100 million.
No, you multiply it by 100 million because we're saying it in Satoshis.
That can't be right. That's wrong. There's something wrong with that, because I know that I've had conversations with these people about what the price would have to be, and it would I knew it was a big number. I don't remember if it was 10 or 100 million, but it's it's definitely not trillion.
I agree that it'll be a huge number.
Yeah, and you might not agree that it'll be that high, and that's totally fine. I might be wrong. It might never get to that point. And that's totally fine, if it doesn't. But, what I'm saying, I was just saying, based off of what it has done the past 10 years, it would almost be I don't know, look at, you guys are numbers guys. Don't you wouldn't it make sense, just based on the numbers, that within the next 10 years, within the next 20 years, it would do something like that? Based on what it's done in the past, based on the numbers, it's literally proven and shown in the past. Look at, maybe it's not likely, but it is possible.
No, of course.
Well, I think it's just, it has to do with the swallowing effect, right? People, an interesting note is gold is so impractical that it couldn't swallow the dollar, despite growing in value of the dollar. And then people say, Bitcoin is more practical, so could it swallow the dollar? And I kind of made my arguments against that earlier. So you have to think of either Bitcoin kind of swallows I think there's like stopping points of the logic as far where Bitcoin goes. So if it swallows the dollar, it hits some absurd price. Who could even say? It's impossible to know.
Mm-hmm.
You could say it swallows gold, and then it hits like a $450,000 value. Mm-hmm. You could say anytime you digitize an asset, it becomes more accessible, right? So music had a certain market cap, and then music went digital, and the market cap exploded because it was more accessible, right? So if Bitcoin's a more accessible gold, maybe it doubles or triples the value of gold. And
very
then it
well
hits,
said.
850K, then it maybe hits like 1.2 mil. But I do think like, I always keep in mind like ceilings, right? Like there is, because again, if Bitcoin like is playing my thesis, and I talked about earlier, like investments follow the thesis, I do see like a terminal velocity to Bitcoin, and then it just acts as like a currency hedge. It does a positive thing for society, but there is, in my eyes, there is at least some sort of top, some considerable top.
I agree with that.
I think to what you were saying about looking at like crypto assets, like based on like market cap, like you look at the market cap for Bitcoin, it's like one of the highest market caps of anything.
It basically makes the crypto market cap right now. It's at around 800 million almost, or maybe maybe 400 million.
No, dude, it's
Bitcoin's in the billions.
Yeah, billions, dude.
Billions.
It surpassed.
I'm sorry.
It surpassed
Berkshire. And
all of those, dude. And I think it just is like right up on Tesla. Look, I'll look.
Bitcoin and Tesla, depending on who has a better day, basically. They're
really?
back and forth, basically.
Yeah, right. But I knew it was right around.
So you've just got the big boys. On top
I'm sorry.
You've got
I meant billions, not trillions.
You've got Google, Amazon, Apple on top, and then after it passes those, it's basically coming for silver and then oil, and then.
Yeah, you see, if it cannibalizes gold, that's a $10 trillion market cap right there.
It will. Of course it will.
It will.
Bro, gold, man. What the hell is gold, dude?
So one thing, because I low-key, I do got to go to a meeting eventually, so here's where I'll leave people off. We're like, there's one idea called like the flippening, like when does Bitcoin flip gold? And here's what I would say, like when Bitcoin becomes 95% the value of gold, those last 5% probably know the end is there, right? So they're all going to immediately sell their gold for Bitcoin. When Bitcoin hits like 90% the value of gold, those last 10% are probably also going to like sell out and immediately make the change. So what you see is as Bitcoin gets closer to gold, people will lose faith in gold and gain faith in Bitcoin. And then that's going to change the money. And what's that going to do? Raise the price. And then even more people lose faith in gold. So you create this positive feedback loop. So my real question is like, to people who like don't think Bitcoin replaces gold or something like that, I'm like, well, if I told you Bitcoin is 99%, you'd probably agree it's going to replace gold. So what's that percent? That's the real moment. Because I promise everybody, there will be a moment in time where Bitcoin gets so kissingly close to gold. Or maybe it's even 30%. Maybe it's smaller than we think. And all of a sudden, you snap your fingers, you wake up, and none of the banks have gold anymore. They've liquidated as much gold as humanly possible.
Yep.
So that's where I'll leave people off. I got to get rolling. It's been
I actually do have a very last question with you. I think that Alex can speak from this as well because he was an econ major. What do you think are the long-term effects of Bitcoin on our economy? Because we didn't talk about a macro perspective on this yet, but I just want you to give me your thoughts, both you two and Alex. Alex has got probably his own thoughts.
So I think I actually am not even going to answer that in the framework of Bitcoin. My Bitcoin framework for that is it just acts as like a hedge on money printing. Central banks will realize that they can't get away. They have to be reasonable with their money printing because you should be allowed to print money, inflate the economy. Sometimes you need to just pump juice into a slow economy. I get that. Life happens.
It's a debt cycle.
But my thing is like what you see right now is over collateralization. So like people will have a pound of gold, and then instead of writing a loan against that pound of gold, they'll write a couple loans against that pound of gold. And essentially like this gold is acting as collateral for more than a pound of gold. So what you see right there is over collateralization. So that's how GameStop hit 130% shorts or 200 or whatever it was, right? When you do blockchain and everything is verifiable and you can see how collateralized assets are to other assets, you're actually going to start to see the leverage in the markets come down because there's no more financial trickery. So in a weird effect, I actually think like markets discretion, Bitcoin will have a negative impact on the markets because so much of market growth is based off of like, I think it's called over hypothecation or over collateralization. I don't want to get wrong the fancy words here, but I think you'll actually see like when people have to start accounting the true numbers, low key, you might see some assets drop in value a little bit, but that's, I think long run, that's healthier. So I think it has a healthy effect on the government, a healthy effect on the markets, all around good stuff.
Beautiful.
I'm the same way. I think Bitcoin
Beautiful.
brings nothing but really good news for the country.
Alex, what about you, man? Because we're starting to put you on the wave now.
I have a few questions, but we can save that for a part 2. But overall, if what these two guys say is true, then yeah, I think this is a pretty good thing in the sense that it's decentralized. It takes away power away from the government, which is always a good thing, because now it's distributed fairly. No one controls it anymore if it's decentralized. Now it belongs, not belongs per se, but it just happens naturally.
It's in the hands of the people. But one thing, always, of course, and we've got to end it right now because we've got circumstantial events happening.
Pete, calm down. So I just want to emphasize before we finish, this is just our thoughts. We are not financial experts.
Financial advice.
Thank you.
Do your own research.
Yeah.
Do your own research. With that being said, Pete, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, even if your Bitcoin goes down, make sure you
stay positive.
I love that.
Stack sats, buy
Dude,
Bitcoin, diamond hands.
Practice that. That was off the cuff.
Beautiful. See you later, guys. We love y'all.